We have Aled Miles in the house. Wow, look at your living. Is that a virtual background or do you actually stay that clean at home? That is very tidy. It's a tidy background. I'm gonna make you a co-host, Aled, which will give you some special abilities on our Zoom, some secret stuff.
You're muted, by the way.
Oh yeah, Aled, you're muted. I didn't know you were.
I was talking to myself. I was deliberately muted, okay?
I could kind of tell, but I wasn't totally sure if I should say anything, so I was just gonna wait and see if you noticed.
Good job, Cami. Thank you.
She's
Right on.
So Cami, who you've met via email, is my Summer Smasher intern. I couldn't do anything without her, including notice when I'm on mute or I haven't recorded or done any of the things that I'm supposed to be doing. She also helps me to maintain the waiting room, which everybody here can just like admit out loud comfortably that I am terrible at managing. I've definitely left people in that waiting room and I still feel bad about it. I think about it sometimes, even when we're not on a Zoom. Okay, so I see we're building up. We're only at 16. I feel like for time's sake, I really just kind of want to get started. I'm sure we'll get more people, the stragglers. We can shame them in the chat or whatever. But again, here is my real true suggestion is that feel free to share your screen, especially when we get to the Q&A portion. And then here, let me share my screen really fast so that we can review the agenda. It's very basic. Housekeeping is just me asking you if you guys have any questions or concerns so far in the program. Usually when I ask this, it's radio silence. I'm assuming today's the same. Does anyone have any questions or concerns? Project related, program related? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Excellent. I will say one thing about housekeeping. I'm noticing a drop in how many people are participating in the thought exercise. I'm not going to be a monster about it, but if I don't see that number climb by next week, I'm going to start sending out emails directly to you guys if you're not answering that thought exercise because it is one of the requirements for the program. Number 2, the thought exercise. Oh, perfect. So let's just jump to it. The question that Aled posed to us, which we kind of tinkered a little bit, Aled, I hope you don't mind, is how do you approach something that is broken? And so as usual, we collected all your answers on Instagram. Thank you for those who participated. And I made a word cloud, and here it is, kind of showing you guys kind of the most common words and then also all the additional words that you guys used. I think that there's some really good words in this word cloud. There's the obvious ones like identify and solution, but then there are interesting words like replace, right? Or what's another one that was good? I like those that Google is one of them. Pinpoint, exact, fulfill. I like the word prevents because it's kind of like looking a little bit more closely at potentially what the problem is doing and not just the problem and it's kind of more specifically in how like the problem is affecting things. So yeah, this is a really cool word cloud. So the next thing is basically to intro Aled. It's time, Aled. It's time for you to take the main stage.
Wow.
I'm gonna present. I will say one thing about Aled.
Oh gosh.
So I know I've already said so many things. So here's the thing that I think is Aled's one of his superpowers. If let's say you were on a ship and it was way off course, like way off course. Aled is the like North Star for off course ships. He will get you right back onto your route and get you to where you want to go. And usually he does that in the final hours for a lot of different businesses. It's his superpower. It's why people look to him and call to him and bring him in. And so we are really lucky because he's going to maybe tell us a little bit about his secret sauce and teach us a little something. Take it away, Aled.
Oh, Asalia, thank you very much indeed. I mean, you should, I think you have to tell my parents what you just said, see if they'd believe you. I'm humbled by what you said. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for inviting me. To all of you It's a pleasure to be here and to participate once again in the program. A lot of fun. I see that Dave Eastman's on, which is a bit of a worry. Now I have to really step up my game, right? So Dave, nice to see you. And it's good to meet all of you, albeit virtually in this fabulous world that we're in at the moment. From a work perspective, a less fabulous one from a personal perspective in so many ways. And it has in its own right thrown up a slew of issues that have in some respects caused many companies to realize that they have a lot that's broken, or that they hadn't fixed things quickly enough, or that they hadn't dealt with risk in the way that perhaps they should, that their preparedness was less than it needed to be. Look, I've got a board member calling me right now, and he's in charge of my risk committee, right? I'm going to have to just ignore him. Goodness me, he'll be most upset by that. So I thought when Arcelia said to me, you know, what topic would you like to discuss? I thought to myself, well, you know, one of the things that I sort of consistently get called upon in my career to do is to help companies that have lost their way. And in a sense, you might regard them as broken, or at least significant parts of them are broken so that they're not growing in a sustainable way. They're not building the kind of revenues that they need to. They're not adding customers at the rate that they should, or that they've got systemic problems that need what I would describe as fairly brave solutions to deal with. And so from the perspective of this being storytell time, right? Some of you may know about the Norton software brand. You're all a little younger than me, so it's perhaps a little less in your sphere now, but Norton Antivirus and Norton Utilities is a $2 billion business. They're perhaps a little bit better known today for Norton LifeLock. Well, I had the pleasure of leading that business for Symantec, and we went through many different iterations and times and market problems that we had to fix on a regular basis. And after I dealt with the Norton business through the downturn of the PC industry, where the PC sales were a lot slower, Apple started to rise, we were not doing so well. When we fixed that, I was asked to lead Latin America. And in Latin America for Symantec, the company I was with, they were breaking the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. And one of my best stories from that moment was discovering people who worked for us in, I won't say the country, who had embezzled over $3 million worth of company money. And when I found them doing it, we had to institute a fix, because as a NASDAQ listed company, you can't break those rules. And I realized when the death threats started coming that there was a real problem, and we really did have to fix it. So sometimes these kind of broken issues are quite severe. And it is amazing how the leadership of a company can either be looking in the other direction, not knowing where to look, or not having the courage to deal with the problem that they have. Now, just real quick, when I left Symantec, I was given my first CEO gig, my first chief exec gig, and that was to turn a company around, which we did. And then the gig I'm in now, which I'm proudly wearing the t-shirt, right? This is Source Labs. I can't even say it properly. I have to say it in an American accent, and I'm British, so it's hard. SaaS Labs is a company that's rather typical in the software industry, that is bumping up against the $100 million mark and can't grow any further because it hasn't learned how to scale. And at the end of the day, as you may enter businesses after the studying that you're doing, whether that's entrepreneurship, whether that is companies like Google, or whether that is startups that already have a market, what companies like Google have shown us so well is the ability to scale. And the magic of a business is that it can scale, it can do so with a sustainability for the future that gives it longevity in the market. And so what I'm trying to do in this fantastic company is grow it beyond $100 million and scale it to $1 billion. So I thought to myself that I would try and fix a subject that might be of some interest. And that is, whoops, have I done the wrong one? Can you see my screen, Alicia? Arcelia?
Yeah.
You can see the "is it broken, how do you fix it" moment?
I do, I see it, except it isn't like full screen. I guess once you get into
That,
presentation mode.
that I can change fairly quickly. So that's helpful, right?
That's perfect.
So I thought we'd just talk a little bit about the concept of breakage and how you fix it. And I asked myself, why this abject, depressing, negative, nihilistic subject? And I was thinking that in my career, what I've noticed is that in order to first recognize that something is broken, or indeed to take action to fix it, is both a personal challenge to us as individuals and an organizational challenge to a company or a division or a startup that you are involved in. And what I hope to achieve today is maybe a little bit of a wake-up call. And secondly, that perhaps there are some things that we can put into the career kit bag, if that makes sense. That maybe if there is one thing that I say today that perhaps in your future you remember, I will feel like this was somewhat successful, if I may say that in a nearly arrogant way. So Arcelia put this up a second ago, if the slide would move. And interestingly, none of the words that you have put in
You
there
are so quick. I can't even believe you did that. Ta-da.
are not any of the words that I would use. I'm not saying that they're the wrong words. They're absolutely not. They are the right words. But it was interesting to me that the kind of storytell message of today, for me, is about truth. Personal truth and company truth. And my experience, and I'm a pretty old guy now, I'm knocking the other side of 55, is that in just about every company that I've been with, I sit on 3 boards. I'm the executive chairman of one company and the CEO of another. Is that in every single instance of my daily life, truth is often absent or avoided. And truth is, in the moment, often politically difficult to say. If you've got a difficult boss, or you've got colleagues that you don't get on with very well. And my first message to you today, as you go into the world, either in companies or leading your own businesses, or dealing with difficult colleagues or bosses, or even in your personal life, it takes leadership with courage to both recognize and address what's broken. And unless that is the foundation and the starting point, then things will remain broken, as they are in many companies. I'm sure you have heard time and time again that it's the oldest analogy that gets brought up, and I'm frustrated that I'm doing it. But you know, I don't know if you remember Blockbuster Video. It's the classic that everybody talks about, but it's so true. They failed to address the truth. And as a consequence, they had problems and eventually went out of business. Recently, J.Crew had underlying fiscal, financial issues that they had failed to address. And what happened is COVID came along and it was the final nudge. JCPenney just filed for bankruptcy. Similar issue. The consistent mismanagement over many, many years, what I call death by 1,000 cuts, were many truths that had been never dealt with. And even in the company that I'm leading right now, we had a conversation this morning about the platform, the technology platform that is the backbone of our business, that over 10 years has become brittle, inconsistent, unreliable in a way that it needs to be if we are to scale as a company. And today, for the first time, we dealt with the truth about our platform, which hurt many people's egos who've been working on it, but perhaps have not been working on it in the right way, or they've had poor leadership. And so we're going to talk for just a little while longer, maybe 20 minutes, then I'm going to stop for questions and give people the chance to disagree with me or speak up. But I'm going to divide this sort of storytelling into two sections: about us as people and about us as companies, living organisms. And it's a balance between soft skills and hard skills. And it's my opinion that in this day and age, we're all taught hard skills. How do you code? How do you become a financial analyst? How do you learn to deliver strong marketing content and gain customers in a digital world? But are we really taught about interpersonal relationships, which form 99% of your day at work? Are we really taught about how to deal with people? And are we really taught about why fixing broken things using a mixture of soft and hard skills is so important? My favorite book. Arcelia asked me if there were any resources. I'll tell you, I've read many books in my career. The one that I love the most is at the bottom of the slide there, Surfing the Edge of Chaos by Richard Pascale. I think it's a brilliant book. It's not an easy read, but it has pearls of wisdom that I have deployed and do deploy every single day. So why does the question, is it broken, matter? I believe that in business, a state of equilibrium is a disadvantage. And it wears the disguise, as Pascale says, of advantage. Things are great. We're fine. That means that you're not looking at the market. You're not worrying about your competition. But most of all, you're not striving to deliver what customers want, even before they know they want it. And some of the best companies in the world cannibalize their own existing business in order to get ahead and think about what the customer needs next before the customer has even woken up to that. And Pascale in his book goes even further to say that equilibrium could be the precursor to death. And the reason I used this rather overused analogy of Blockbuster is that it does, despite its overuse, show rather perfectly that Blockbuster thought, we're fine. DVDs for sale in stores that people have to walk into. They pay for the DVD, they take it home, they plug it into the machine. And whilst they were happy, Netflix was creating an incredible change to the market, which of course has become the de facto standard in the way that we consume that type of content. Equilibrium was truly the precursor to death. I hope that as you go into the world of business, or in the world of business that you are in right now, that you become conscious that the greatest failure of all is the failure to act. And that's why this question, I think, is at the heart of most business that we have to deal with. However, as I said, it takes courage to recognize and address. And I think the greatest quality of any human being in business, literally, the quality I look for in my staff and in my executive team and in my boards are these two words. And I challenge you to ask yourself on a day-to-day basis, are you self-aware of who you are? Are you self-aware of what you do and how you do it? Are you self-aware of your behavior? Because it's often your behavior that prevents things from being fixed. It's often your behavior that fails to recognize the truth. It's often your behavior that fails to want to know the truth, or it's your behavior, the truth is too difficult. It's too difficult to deal with our employee colleagues. It's too difficult to deal with our boss. It's too difficult to make that really hard decision that is the true north decision that we should make. It's too difficult to go get client feedback. And so we enter, because of our own state, a state of equilibrium, where we're not there to recognize the truth. So what I am driving in our company right now is a culture of self-awareness, a willingness to understand and be open to who we are with courage that is not a sign of weakness. So let me give you a tool to put in your kit bag. There are many of these. I don't care which one you use. Arcelia is an interesting person to understand here. I think that naturally she's an extrovert. But I've also noticed that she has got insane attention to detail. Have you ever felt that? Right, Kemi? And so she is interestingly analytical. And it's quite an unusual mix, because usually people who are extrovert like me, they kind of shy away from the analytical stuff and they want to know the net. Personally, I'm a driver extrovert. That's my natural state. Now, I'm not saying that anybody is wrong in any one of these boxes. We are who we are. But the interesting thing about this is if you want to face the truth to fix something, you're going to need to work with colleagues. And to do that, you need to understand base personality type. You need to understand how to deal with a boss who's a driver. You need to deal with Arcelia in a couple of ways. She loves the fun. She's brilliant to be around. I love her company. But I know if I don't give her detail, if I don't follow up with my comments, or if I don't get on the phone and say, this is what happened in the meeting I had with such and such a entrepreneurial team, she gets mad, she gets frustrated because she's trying to do her job. So if I want the best out of Arcelia as a colleague, as a subordinate, or as a boss, I need to remember who she is. And the best thing you can do is to get in that box with them. Now, if everybody thought like that, there would be less conflict, because we would be approaching personality types in a way that is most likely to get the best behavior and the best results. If you think about those people in your life that you love, maybe a boyfriend or a girlfriend, a father or a mother, a brother or a sister, it's kind of interesting to stop and ask yourself, is my relationship with them not going well? Do we fight a lot? Am I showing up to win too much? Or am I showing up to learn? Am I an agile relationship learner? at 55, you start to do this a bit naturally. So when I first met Arcelia, or when I first met Dave, I find myself kind of automatically working out who they are. Not in a weird way, but just in a, if I play appropriately here, I will get the best from this person, and I will have the best relationship from this person, and I will eventually be able to say anything to them. I don't have a great relationship with my mother. I really don't. Because I show up to win on every call, and so does she. We're both extroverts, but I'm a driver when she's amiable. If I stop driving and get into amiable, the tension comes out of the relationship, and we can start fixing the broken stuff that's in our relationship. But I spend too much time as a driver. So in and amongst your colleagues, it's a very interesting, reach into your kit bag. This is your soft skill kit bag. You're trying to fix a problem. You won't get the best behavioral result if you are first not self-aware and then aware of the people that you need to help. Here's the next one. Self-awareness enables you to understand which of these 4 states of mind you're in. And you might not know it. The reason I believe this is useful in the how to fix it part of soft skills is because it also is a language that you can use in your relationships with people. Now, I will tell you that the word incompetence is a bit it's a bit too heavy, right? It's definitely got a small I, not a big I. I don't necessarily know it's the most perfect word, but it's illustrative. So let me give an example. Arcelia, did you drive the car to work today?
No, I'm working from home.
Of course, we're in the middle of a crisis. I forgot about that. Good job for staying at home. Remember the last time you got in the car and drove?
I actually.
Were you?
Oh, go ahead.
Go on. Don't tell me you haven't got a driving license.
No, please continue.
When your last journey you made, do you remember every single moment of that journey and every decision you made in that journey?
Terrifyingly, no, I do not. I think sometimes I end up somewhere and forget a lot of what I did in that drive. I get on a little bit of like, what is it called? Like muscle memory stuff.
Well, I would say that as long as you reached your destination without hurting yourself or somebody else, without breaking the law, then you were you were unconsciously competent, right? What I call flow, FLO. There's a great book on that, by the way. You all have skill sets where you are unconsciously competent. And unconscious competence is a wonderful place to be. But imagine that you are unconsciously incompetent. You're doing things or not doing things without realizing. You just are not aware of them. And as a boss, as a leader, as a CEO, I spend time with my teams asking them if they are in unconscious or conscious incompetence. What is their level of self-awareness as they address a problem that needs to be fixed? Because if they're unconsciously incompetent, they're not aware that there's a problem. It's great to be able to shift people up that first arrow into conscious incompetence. Our platform is not performing in the way that it needs to. Or our technology platform is performing okay today, but I've got to raise your conscious incompetence to realize that in 3 years from now, it doesn't scale and we're going to have a major problem. So let's shift the team or the people or the leader or you to a state of conscious incompetence that leads you to conscious competence. And it is only when you start moving in that journey can things be fixed. The very 4 states here are insanely important to understand before you start trying to fix something. Because you're looking for alignment. Are we all aware of what needs to be done and why it needs to be done? I didn't say how it needs to be done. That's a different issue. But often when you're trying to fix a company, it is about moving the company from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence to conscious competence. And maybe it starts to flow without realizing how good it is. I'm nervous about the last one, but I like the journey of the first 3, if that makes sense. All right, 1:30. Let's keep going. So we just talked about company awareness, the living, breathing organism that is a company, full of people, all wanting to do things in their own way in different directions, all, oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's one of the greatest rewards of my career is when you finally get awareness to a state of conscious competence. How? How? Well, I use this. Here's what I believe. Before you read the 4 points, read the top one. Because I know when you put slides like that together, everybody reads the first 4 points first, right? There's a bit of self-awareness for us. With very few exceptions, any company or division at any stage of any size in any market and in any country is failing in one or more of these areas. Think about something that is personal to you, right? It could be a project at university. It could be, excuse me 1 second.
It could be your summer smasher project.
So it could be your summer smasher project. By the way, that was my 7-year-old son wanting to come in, despite the fact that I asked him to give me 1 hour. Oh boy, the joys of working from home, right? That's the reality of it today. Let's take your summer smasher project, right? If you don't get the diagnosis of why that project may not be working right, or you are trying to build an outcome for the project, you have to start with diagnosis. Let me give you an easier one. I go to hospital because I fell on my ankle. I walk in and the doctor says, great, I'm going to put a bandage around your knee. You can tell where that's going. He can build strategy to fix my ankle all day long, but if he thinks it's my knee, it ain't going to work. So we've got to get to the right diagnosis. Then if he says, well, my strategy is I'm going to wrap your knee, the strategy's off. And then if he calls in 3 specialists and he hasn't got strategy or diagnosis right, it doesn't matter how aligned the group of doctors is, it's not going to fix. And worse, if they execute incorrectly based on diagnosis or strategy, or they lack alignment, the problem gets worse. For a company like ours, Source Labs had failed to diagnose the growth of the mobile market and had stayed focused on the web market. So because it had its diagnosis wrong, it didn't even think about strategy. It's a bit like holding a bamboo cane at the bottom. If you grip it really weakly, right? It's doing that at the bottom. At the top, it's going to flail wildly from side to side. But if you grab it hard and then you add strategy and then you add alignment, execution is strong. 2 of my favorite phrases. Execution without strategy is aimless. Strategy without execution is pointless. For a company to solve its problems, it has to understand what is wrong and have the courage as a company built of individuals to face the truth, build a strategy to deal with that diagnosis that is accurate and thoughtful, with the right degree of measurement and accountability. But that's not enough. You have to go back to self-awareness. You have to go back to the personality types. You have to go back to conscious or unconscious competence or incompetence and get aligned. I don't believe in the concept of we disagree, we agree to disagree. I believe that builds resentment. I believe in compassionate compromise. Only compassionate compromise builds alignment. A moment where I say, you know what, Arcelia, you're right. I'm going to give you this one. Or I'm going to say, Arcelia, I think you're wrong, but I'm going to step out of this room supporting you because the bigger team needs to win. And my ego and my personality must be secondary to us solving this bigger problem. But I do want to hold you accountable. And if the measurements go wrong, I want you to be the first person that stands up and says, this wasn't working. Your idea may be right. Nobody is smug. Nobody is I told you so. And nobody is spoiling things with your boss. That's a compassionate culture of compromise. It's not easy to get, and it requires everyone to get it. And everyone can get it if they understand the process here. Remember, what I just talked about feels like it's sequential. But companies and businesses and problems are not sequential. Sometimes you have to do things in a sequential way at the same time as doing things in parallel. That's the complexity of business. And I just wanted to say to you, don't get caught in the tyranny of either or. Some things need to happen together at the same time, both. They're not either or choices. And I throw this slide in because in my career, I've noticed some people say, well, we should do this or this. Well, sometimes you should do both. I believe that Dana, my old colleague and friend, spent some time with you on the concept of measurement and how to measure things. In order to fix problems, you absolutely have to be operationally sound. You have to have measurements that are detailed and accountable. These are mine for my job right now. And you have to have both the soft skills and this hard focus that says, hey, in Q1, Alid, as the CEO of the company, based on 2 of his objectives, were red. He didn't meet the objectives that were there in front of him, but 2 of them were green. I publicize to the company my success as an individual, and I do it for the entire executive team. I define my area of responsibility, the 3 areas of focus, and the critical outcomes I have to deliver for our company in 2020, and how I measure them every single quarter. And by the way, that's how I get paid. So right now, my salary is not as big as it should be because I'm in the red. And I throw this slide in to remind us that operational and adaptive, soft and hard skills are necessary in your journey to fix things. There's always going to be something that is broken that needs fixing. I say to everybody on my team, it's everyone's role to speak up and get down to it. The way we do the work is as important as the work we do. Being the right way makes doing the right thing a lot more likely. Those are some thoughts. I wanted to stop. Look at that. I said 20 minutes so we can have a discussion, questions, and maybe some of you will turn on your video and so I can see your faces.
Well, hallelujah. You guys just experienced the Church of Aled Miles. My goodness. I am inspired by you every single time you and I talk. Truly, you are just such an inspirational. I mean, this is
Thank you.
to do what you do. So, yes, please, anyone. Does anyone? I mean, this is a very unique opportunity to talk with someone as learned and experienced and helpful as Aled, who's got the guts to turn on their camera and ask a question. I'll start just to like warm up the crowd. You know, in my experience working in different systems, for instance, for a long time I've worked in the education system, and it's a big system, especially if you're looking at LAUSD. And sometimes it feels a little bit like you're a very small cog trying to affect change in a really big failing system. And I'm wondering, are there any tools that someone in those particular cases, right, kind of being, you're the hard worker bee and you want things to be better, how can you address someone who is maybe right above you, like your supervisor, or even, you know, beyond that? Like, what are some ways that kind of the smaller team members, and smaller is like, right, it's not, smaller sometimes is a bigger role, but just smaller in terms of representation in big conversations. And so how can you do that? Is there like a method to that?
My gosh, I mean, that's a huge question, right? I would start with the first moment you meet your new boss. I would ask him or her this question: what does success look like for us? How do you want me to behave? How do I want you to behave? How are we going to work together that makes us both successful? Let's define some of the attributes that we want. Let's write them down. Let's agree with them. You're going to learn a lot from that conversation. And it's a conversation that most bosses don't have the other way, which I think is a great lack of leadership. Then you have a definition. And you can always go back to that as your compass. Then I would say to you, just to reiterate, you need to understand the personality type of that individual, because how you approach that individual is going to gain you an outcome, right? So I believe in the following equation: an event plus behavior equals a result. And how you show up is the only thing that you can manage. You can't control the behavior of somebody else. You can't control your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, aunt, uncle, mother, father, brother, sister. You can't. All you can do is put in to the cake that is that relationship the right ingredients. But you can point out that they might be putting in glass and sand while you're putting in yeast and eggs and chocolate chip cookies, as long as they're vegan. And you can identify their behavior, but you can't change it. The third thing, I think, is that you have to have the courage to call it out, and have the courage to say, it doesn't matter how many times I say that. It doesn't mean I'm less wrong. It just means I'm being less listened to every time. The fourth thing I got to say, and this is the bravest thing of all, and sometimes you decide to do it and sometimes you don't because of moments in your life, and that's all fair. And that is whether you say to your boss, listen, I reserve the right to talk to your boss. And that can be political suicide. And only you, in your moment, in your career, in your life, can decide when that's the right, the wrong thing to do. There have been moments where I've avoided doing it because I know that the outcome will be as bad as the outcome I've got with my boss. But then you've made a choice. And as long as that choice doesn't turn into a moment where you've decided to quit, but stay, then you're not necessarily in the right frame of mind. I would say to you that the majority of those moments, Arcelia, are soft skill moments that need hard skill backup. And let me stop there and see if that is in any way helpful.
I think that was a really great answer. I think starting off on the right foot when you are taking on a new responsibility in life is a great way to ensure that the stage is set for success. So I think that's a really, really great response. Steve, I noticed that you turned on your camera. Is that because you have something to say? Also, it looks like you're in, I don't know, in a cabin or something. Is this your home?
I am in a cabin.
Oh my gosh.
So Aled, point number 2, Arcelia is super detailed and captures every little item. So, hey Aled, great connecting with you. Really amazing discussion. Really appreciate your clarity and insight and how you really can dissect things and really get to the bare minimum of what is essential. That's always an amazing ability. So I had a question for you, given a lot of us are working in and iterating around in the startup phase of things. Can you provide or share some insights on startups as we're more in the product to market fit, and we're focused on trying to figure out what that roadmap is, where you've traditionally been in a role where you're trying to repurpose the ship. We're just trying to get the ship to get off on its voyage. And how that kind of wraps around hiring the right teams and who are those right members. And then also, I think equally as important, how to maintain that kind of focus and how to best get the most out of individuals in this journey that is a bit more amorphous and nebulous as you're trying to kind of get this thing going.
Yeah. Steve, firstly, thank you for your kind words. You're not in Tahoe, are you?
No, I'm visiting my parents in a cabin up here in the mountains. So
nice, as I'm in Tahoe right now. So I was wondering whether you were down the street. That would have been hilarious. So look, I always feel, and I've said this at the Startup Garage many, many times, when it comes to startups, I'm a total fraud because I've never done one. I've watched my wife do one, but I've never done one. So my advice is always weak because I've never sat in your shoes. And by the way, I have incredible admiration for people like you that are starting something. I don't know if I could do it. You're spot on about product market fit. And by the way, it never changes, right? One of our biggest problems as an established company is product market fit, quite frankly. The fact that you bring that up as something that is perhaps the backbone, the most critical piece, I admire straight off. You've got to find out whether you've got something that is relevant and magic for your customers, whether it has exactly what you said, product market fit. I'm still a believer though, Steve, that as you try to work that process out every day, that the constancy of diagnosis and strategy matter. Because market fit is about understanding, right? It is about potentially being able to see around corners, understand where markets are going, understand where things are colliding or not. And that we spend a huge amount of time, months, that frustrates the heck out of people, making sure that our diagnosis is right at the start. And in the work that I've been fortunate enough to do when I started as an IIR with you guys, was trying to work out with some of the teams, did they have product market fit? And one of them in particular, we'll keep them nameless, I strongly felt, and Dave will remember the conversation I had with him in the first couple of weeks, which was, I don't think these guys have got, I don't think they're going to get anywhere. And the hardest thing, and I've said this again in public, is that one of the self-awareness issues in entrepreneurship I've noticed, it happened to my wife, is knowing when to stop. It's not going to work. Don't throw any more money at it. Don't throw any more sweat equity at it. But better go find where the product market fit should be. And what those guys did is they pivoted, and I haven't followed them of late, and Arcelia and Dave will tell you more about them than me. It felt like they achieved product market fit because they started doing better diagnosis, and they found that strategy evolved after it. Now, the second part of your question, I think, gets answered by alignment and execution, right? again, could not agree with you more that people are everything. Bad hires are a nightmare. I call it the dripping blood of 3/4. You know the feeling, Steve, right? You hire somebody, it takes you a quarter to work out they're wrong, right? Then guess what? You fail to act quickly. So the second quarter goes and finally they're causing too much disruption or they're not, right? So you get rid of them in the third quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, you start hiring again. That's a year gone. And you know, and I know that in technology, a year is a lifetime.
Mhm.
The diagnosis of what you want as in your hiring is critical. And here's what people do. They go straight for people they know and they hire to like. Wrong. And then we end up in a world that's not diverse. See the last few months. Then we end up with the system has not been sequential. Meaning, here's the way I hire. What's the job that needs doing? What are the skills and attributes needed to do the job? Where should that person be based relative to the rest of the team, even in this day and age? Now I draw up a short list. Because you know how fast you go to, well, I know someone who can do that job. Or that person in that department could come over and do that job. Or someone recommended before a job description's written, before the identification of the role that is needed, the objectives and measurements that we will measure that individual by, and the skills and attributes needed to do the job. Soft and hard. We don't follow that sequence, so we hire badly. I wish I could remember the name of it. I'll get it to you. There's a company in San Francisco I've been using. Unbelievable. Young entrepreneur, female, incredible. She gets the input as to what we want, the skills and attributes, and then she builds it into a video game. And she gets people to play a video game, and that tells us whether they have the skills and attributes of the job, and she's got like a 70% correct hit rate. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, great.
I'll get you the name of it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for your thoughts, Elad.
Great question, Steve. It's hard.
Great question.
Startups are hard because I often feel like a startup founder has to wear lots of hats, and being a recruiter might not be one of their strengths. And, you know, like, knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know can also be a big challenge, right? It's kind of that like willful ignorance, or what was it on? It's like incompetence. It's even if it's like conscious incompetence, you still have the responsibility to hire for your very small team. And so it can be really challenging, Steve. Like, I think it's a super important aspect, but it's a lot harder for startups because you don't have a lot of history behind you to help you to inform your decisions. I just noticed that Dave Eastman took the time to start his video. I'd like to just really quickly introduce you, Dave, if you don't mind, to the Summer Smasher students. Dave Eastman.
The Dave Eastman.
He's the director of Viterbi Startup Garage. He is a key player in bringing amazing people like Aled into the garage, who basically help our teams track and strategically advise them so that they're making good decisions on a week-by-week basis so that they can scale. Like Aled was saying, is so difficult. So a little mini round of applause for Dave for just joining us. And I'm wondering, to what pleasure do we owe this video?
And by the way, is he allowed to ask a question? Because I wouldn't have taken the gig if I knew he was going to ask questions.
I don't know. Are we out of bounds?
He's the most brilliant CFO I know, and I'm not very CFO oriented, so I'm stuck.
This is a flag, red flag. Go for it, Steve.
Thank you, RC. You're very kind. I will just say this. I assume that this is being recorded. Is that correct? And RC's on mute, but she's giving me a very great mime impression of.
This is a recording that I'm in the books. This is
okay. I will just say
of Alan Miles.
For all of our Summer Smasher participants, you have just had And by the way, not that Dana wasn't extraordinary herself last week, but Aled has given you, and I'm speaking as probably the oldest person on this call, but I will say that Aled has given you, he's given you about a 1 hour MBA degree. Not the kind of basic blocking and tackling things. You're going to get that. That's all fine. But in terms of what really matters, so I would strongly advise you to watch this recording and then watch it again and then again, because Aled every 3 or 4 minutes would give you a concept that you could peel the onion on for weeks and months and learn really how business works. So thank you. Thank you very much for that. Truly an extraordinary presentation. And so here's my one question for Aled, because I'm fascinated, since he was kind enough to diagnose RC for us, and quite correctly, I would say. Help my self-awareness, my friend. Where do I fall on your quadrant?
Well, I built a separate quadrant for you, Dave, which is unfortunately classified because it was requested by the US government. So I'm not really at liberty to tell you that, but I will tell you, I'll tell you, everyone, Dave for me is this unusual mix. So I think he is, look, I think naturally he is a very effervescent, social individual who loves people. That puts him highly in the extrovert category. But as a successful CFO, you cannot be a successful CFO to the degree that Dave has without being deeply, deeply analytical and have that capability. Now, I'm gonna go somewhere that I didn't deliberately go. To answer your question a bit more, Dave, I know that when you need to be a driver, I wouldn't want to be in your way. And I have also witnessed you and the way you talk about your family or those that you feel are your family, our mutual connection, in an extremely amiable way. So this sounds like I'm sitting on the fence, right? He's in all 4 boxes. But what a distinguished and experienced leader does is get to the middle. If you've ever played badminton or tennis or racquetball or squash, if you're British, you'll know that there's a T in the middle on your side of the court. And the place where you will win from is as close to the center as possible. Because, I mean, tennis is a little different. So I'm a tennis player, so I'll be careful of the analogy. But your ability to get to 4 corners of the court, you have to get to them from the shortest point. And the analogy that I draw in that basis is that if you know that you start from the center, then when I'm dealing with Dave, I know that in certain moments I need to be analytical. In certain moments I can be amiable. In certain moments he wants me to get something done, I'm going to go into driver. And sometimes we're just shooting the world, enjoying getting to know each other. We're both having fun and being extrovert. And the magic for me is you're not wrong to be in any one of the boxes. The magic is to know when to go to them and to develop the skills that you need all through them. And RC, to your point, as an entrepreneur, you need to wear those hats. One day you need to be motivating. It goes back a little bit to Steve's point. One day you need to be motivating. One day you need to be very thoughtful about how you drive somebody who's very quiet and amiable, who doesn't want to be dealt with in an aggressive manner, who might not want to even turn their screen on. Be in all those boxes. And I think, Dave, what you have is the experience and the thoughtfulness to be in all of them when you need to be.
Well, thank you kindly, good sir. We're just about done here. So do any of our Summer Smasher participants have any questions for Aled? I mean, this is an extraordinary opportunity, folks. So if you have them, now's the time.
If questions come to mind beyond our time, which is coming to a close, you can always message me and I can shoot those over to Aled and see if I can get him to answer. But as you can see from his mid-presentation call, he's a very busy man. So we were very fortunate to have you at this time, Aled. I can't thank you enough for coming and spending time with our students. I will let you go because I know you have pressing things. And everyone, I'll see you Founder Friday.
this week is going to be Pocket CFO. So we'll learn a little bit about them. And then also we will do our drawing for $25 Postmates gift card for people who participate on our Instagram. So please, please, please answer our get to know you questions. It's all about animals this week, and we'll see you Friday. Bye.
Thank you all. Good luck.
Thanks,
Thank
Alec.
you.
Pleasure. Good to see you all.